OLY RALFE from the RALFE band. Yes?
That is me.
Yes.
That is still me.
Yeah. Now that's 20 years, I think. It's around the time I saw you do one of your first gigs, around 2004,
Yeah,
5.
yeah. We started playing around London 2004, 5, and then the first album came out in 2005.
Okay, so
Swords.
we'll go back to that, but let's fast forward now to this album, which is now 2024, but this album came out in 2023.
Yeah, so this is the latest Ralph Band album. Achilles Was a Hound Dog, which came out last year. It was the first one for a while. I worked on it for quite a long time, and it was one of those kind of perfectionist projects, and I spent a good couple of years on it or more, and it included some songs from further back, and so it's a kind of quite a kind of almost a compilation of music that I've been writing for quite a while, and then it kind of came into focus 2022 when we mixed it. I was definitely exploring some new influences in terms of like vocal delivery, vocal style. People have kind of said it's a bit more new wave, and there's even like comparisons to sort of a bit of Lou Reed and Jonathan Richman and those kind of artists, and who I really like, and I don't think it sounds like them, but I think I was channeling a bit more of those kind of influences. And then in the arrangements, it's quite punchy, and sort of in terms of the production, it's a bit more deliberate and kind of in your sort of to the point somehow.
Is it like maybe like it feels like, because obviously I know all your albums. This is like a pop record, perfect pop record.
Yeah, thank you if you think so. I mean, it's very kind of crafted approach to the songwriting and the arrangements, and with quite a lot of vocal harmonies by Emma on this record, Emma Faulkner. And I definitely sort of indulged the kind of production arrangement process maybe more than in the earlier albums. It was a bit more haphazard in a way, a bit more, I don't know. I suppose I was just more experienced in making this record, and I kind of I crafted it a lot. So,
and we'll go back in a minute, but just do you want to just quickly just go through the musicians that played on the record, because it's quite a lot.
Yeah, so there's a lot. There's me and there's Emma Faulkner on vocals, and that's a big distinctive part of the palette. Is this kind of female vocal, which I love in a lot of music. I love the male female vocal kind of interplay, and so it kind of. She provides a lot of harmony, and it sort of took the pressure off me in a way to like carry all the vocal, and which allowed me to kind of do more of a kind of character voice in a characterful vocal, which is kind of what I was looking to do. And then there's a lot of Garo Nahalakian who mixed the album on guitar and bass, and various sort of Ralph Band members or sort of contributors on it. And so you can kind of get that idea that it's a bit of a patchwork of tracks from different sessions and sort of writing projects. I did the previous Ralph Band album, Some Be Wise, and then I took a bit of a detour to do instrumental writing, which is something I love doing on the piano. Did this album called Notes from Another Sea, and then kind of once that was out, I kind of got stuck in properly with this album. There's a couple of instrumentals on it, but it's predominantly songs.
Okay, cool. So let's go back now to the first album, Swords.
Yeah.
And do you want to just tell us how that came about, and brief history about that and the instrumentation?
Yeah, Swords was, it's just my fantasy first album. I had always dreamt of making an album. All my heroes were kind of in my head, and I just longed to make an album. And I made it with my friend Mitchell, and it was very much a kind of quite a homemade album, but made, I think, in our flat in South London, and it got picked up by Skint Records. So it was a very sort of quite a kind of lo-fi homemade album, but it got picked up by a quite well-known British dance label who were looking at diversifying what they put out, and they picked up on our record, so we kind of got a good start with that. And That was Swords, yeah. And it was a very sort of quirky approach to the making the album. I'd often only just do one vocal take, and I was quite sort of willfully sort of kind of unprofessional about it.
I remember thinking it reminded me of Syd Barrett and things like that, sort of like psychedelic folk.
Yeah.
Did you say?
Yeah, that's sort of how it was characterised. There was a lot of folk. Very into Dylan, but particularly Dylan at that time, and there's some of the more English sort of bands like Gorky's who maybe had a psychedelic kind of folk aspect to them. And
let's go to the one before that.
Okay, that was Attic Thieves. So that was the kind of difficult second album, but we got there and we made a follow-up. By which time both albums have been picked up by Talitras, who are a label in France, who released those two, and then we came back together for this one because Talitras released the new album, which was really great. And then I went on to do a soundtrack to Bunny and the Bull. Bunny and the Bull was an instrumental album predominantly, like a score really that we made into an album. Yeah. And that was a great project. There's a couple of songs on it, but it's mainly piano-led sort of instrumentals and some sound design and a bit of orchestration, small group, small string stuff. And it's kind of the RALFE band sort of sound, but sort of let loose on a film. Yeah. And the subject of the film is a road movie and across Europe, and it just sort of clicked with our music, I think, and we got to do it. So really.
And then after that, what came after that?
After Bunny and the Bull, we did Some Be Wise. So that was the
2014
sort of third studio album. Yeah, that one came out on a label called Highline Records. It's always been very melodic and I think lyrically quite kind of my own thing, quite distinctively me. But I think as the albums have gone on, they've matured in a way and there's more interest in crafting arrangements that are more sort of dynamic and lush, and people often sort of say the music's quite cinematic, and it's not a kind of deliberate thing, it just happens. I think they conjure up imagery in places. The lyrics are quite vivid, and then sometimes I think something about the kind of way I write melodically is quite evocative to people. So I'd say it's been a kind of maturing, refining process. Each album I've learned more about making albums, really. I think I've become more of a producer, a bit more kind of consciously, I suppose. I think you do, if you make your own albums, you become a bit more of a sort of craftsman about it.
Yeah, I was going to say the craft of songwriting, maybe you've heard.
Yeah, I've kind of worked on the craft of it, rather than like, I've got a few songs, just, hooray, just record them. I think, I've taken a bit more time.
Okay, but I think that's really good. That brings us back to this album, which I think is like your songwriting craft in full focus and fully realised. And, like, let's say 10 kind of perfect pop songs.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I wanted every track on the album to just to kind of just connect, quite in a quite immediate way. And I also wanted the album to be quite uplifting, and it's kind of up. Some of the earlier albums, they ebb and flow a bit more in terms of mood, whereas this is quite straight to the point, mid-up tempo tracks. And I think that's just what I was enjoying listening to at the time. I wasn't in a kind of a ballad phase, really. I was just wanting to just sort of hit people in quite an immediate way, really, with the songwriting. So they're quite lean, and but they build, and and they've been enjoyable to play live too. Basically, over the last year, I've toured a lot with Gaz Coombs, who I know through the Oxford music scene where I used to live, and a lot of my musicians are from. So I had this great invitation to like gig with Gaz, which I did generally solo and duo, and then that's kind of informed like how I've been writing over the last few months, over the last year, where I've kind of been doing a bit of new writing, and so I'm kind of working on a quite stripped down approach to a record, which sort of come about almost from just me and a guitar and a drum machine on very minimal arrangements that I had to do live because I was playing solo.
So that will be the new direction.
That's feeling like the new direction. Could be famous last words. It could end up an overblown orchestral monster. But currently, the plan is to keep it quite stripped back. Yeah.
Ollie, Ralph Band, thank you very much.